My husband told his mom my salary. I told his boss about his fake degree, and he got demoted yesterday. He slams the front door so hard the picture frame in the hallway tilts, and I flinch even though I tell myself I'm done flinching. His work bag hits the floor with a dull thud, then another thud when he kicks it like it offended him. I'm at the kitchen bench with my laptop open, pretending I'm reading an email, but my eyes are just staring at the same line over and over because my brain is already bracing for the impact of whatever mood he dragged home. He's breathing fast, like he's been holding in all day, and now he gets to unload it on me. So, he says, voice shaking with this ugly mix of anger and panic, "You feel good about yourself? You feel powerful?" He holds up his phone, screen facing me, and I can see an email thread. HR, his manager, words like role adjustment and effective immediately. He didn't even take his lanyard off. His cheeks are blotchy, his eyes wet, but not crying. And he's pacing like if he stops moving, he'll shatter. "They did it," he says. "They actually demoted me. Yesterday, in front of everyone." It was a month ago on a Sunday afternoon when I first realized he'd told his mother my salary, and it didn't happen in some dramatic confession with him admitting it like a cartoon villain. It happened the way most betrayals happen, sideways, through a casual comment that shows you the shape of what someone's been saying about you when you're not in the room. We were at his parents' place for lunch, the kind of lunch that's never just lunch. His mom, Lorraine, had cooked enough food for a small wedding and acted like it was effortless. His dad sat in the recliner with the sports on low, half participating, half judging from his throne. His sister dropped her kids off and disappeared into her phone. Everything was normal, which in that house means everyone is performing normal while they size each other up. I was rinsing plates in the kitchen when Lorraine leaned in and said, in this almost sweet voice, "So, must be nice earning what you do." I turned, confused, soap on my hands, and she smiled wider like she'd just caught me hiding something. "You could probably pay off a whole mortgage in a few years," she added. Then she laughed and said, "No wonder you're so independent." I remember the exact feeling. Heat rising in my face, not from embarrassment exactly, but from being exposed. Because I don't talk about money. Not with her. Not with anyone in that family. I grew up in a house where money was discussed in whispers, where you didn't announce numbers, you just quietly try to keep the lights on. I worked my way into a decent job, and I've always treated that salary like something private, like underwear. It's mine. It's not a conversation starter. But Lorraine said the number, my number, like she was reading it off a menu. "You know my salary?" I asked, and it came out sharper than I intended. Lorraine blinked, did this tiny feigned surprise. "Oh, honey," she said, "I'm not silly. We're family. We talk." I dried my hands too hard on the tea towel like I could scrub the feeling off my skin. I walked back into the dining room and looked at my husband, Ethan, laughing at something his sister said, relaxed, comfortable, like he hadn't just handed my privacy over like a gift. When our eyes met, something flickered across his face. Not guilt, more like a warning. Like, "Don't do this here." I waited until we were in the car to say it. My hand were tight on my seatbelt, my jaw aching from clenching. "Did you tell your mom my salary?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. He stared out the windshield like the road was suddenly fascinating. Then he sighed, heavy, the way he sighs when he wants me to feel like I'm exhausting. "It came up," he said. "It came up how?" My voice shook because I hated how much it mattered to me. "Ethan, did you tell her the number?" He shrugged. Actually shrugged. "I don't know why you're acting like it's classified information," he said. "It's not a big deal." It was such a small sentence, and it landed like a slap. Not because of the words, but because of what it meant. Your boundaries are inconvenient to me. "It is a big deal," I said. "It's my private information. Why would you tell her that?" He rolled his eyes, and that's when my stomach really sank. The eye roll is his tell. It's how he says you're irrational without saying it. "She asked," he said. "She was just proud. She always said you were smart. It's a compliment." "She used it like ammunition," I said, thinking about the way Lorraine said independent, like it was a character flaw. "She didn't ask because she's proud. She asked because she wants something." Ethan gripped the steering wheel, and his voice went tight. "Can you not make my mom the villain in every story?" I stared at him. "You're missing the point. No, he snapped. You're missing the point. You're always so paranoid about money, like someone's going to steal it out of your account. It's just a number. I wanted to scream. I didn't. I tried to keep it calm. It's not just a number. It's my safety. It's my choices. It's the thing that lets me sleep at night. And you gave it away. Ethan's face hardened. I didn't give anything away. But he did. And I found out exactly how much he gave away at the next family dinner. 2 weeks after that lunch, Lorraine hosted a little get-together. That's what she called it. It was my birthday month, not my birthday, but close enough for her to pretend this was partly for me. There was a cake, but it wasn't my favorite. There were candles, but she lit them before I even walked in. Everything in that house is staged. We sat around the table, and people talked over each other. I was halfway through a glass of wine when Lorraine put down her fork and said, "So, we've been thinking." I knew that tone. It's the tone that means you're about to be assigned a role. Ethan's sister, Maddie, smiled and said, "It's just temporary." I looked at Ethan. He didn't look back. Lorraine clasped her hands like she was about to bless the meal. "Maddie's car is on its last legs," she said. "And with the kids, she can't be without reliable transport. We've all been chipping in, but—" She turned her eyes to me, warm and sharp at the same time. "You could cover the rest. Easily. It's not like it would hurt you." There it was. Not would you consider, not if you're comfortable. Just an assumption wrapped in a smile. I set my glass down carefully because my hand was shaking. "How much are we talking?" I asked. Maddie said a number that made my eyebrows lift. It wasn't a small favor. It was a full-on purchase. "That's a lot," I said slowly. Lorraine waved a hand. "For you?" She said, like she was genuinely confused. "Sweetheart, you're more than Ethan. We know that. You could pay it and still have plenty." My body went cold. The table got louder and quieter at the same time. I could hear forks scraping plates, someone's kid laughing in the living room, the refrigerator humming, normal sounds that suddenly felt like they belonged to another life. I looked at Ethan again. He finally met my eyes, and his expression was annoyed. Not at his mother, at me. Like he was bracing for me to embarrass him. "I'm not buying Maddie a car," I said, and I kept my voice steady even though my chest was pounding. Lorraine's smile didn't move, but her eyes narrowed. "Not buying," she repeated, emphasizing the word like I'd just accused her of theft. "We said help. You're asking me to cover the rest," I said. "That's not help. That's paying." Maddie's face tightened. "Wow," she said quietly. "Okay." Ethan's dad muttered something like, "Here we go," under his breath. Lorraine leaned forward. "You married into this family," she said. Her voice got softer, which somehow made it worse. "And family takes care of family." I could feel my face burning. I could feel my spine going rigid. "And Ethan told you my salary, so you could decide what I owe?" I asked, and my voice cracked on, "Oh," because it came from somewhere deep and bitter. Ethan slammed his hand lightly on the table. Not a bang, just a firm, warning tap. "Stop," he said. "Not here. Not here. Not in front of them. Not where they could see that he'd thrown me under the bus." I pushed my chair back. "I'm going outside," I said, and I heard Lorraine make a little offended sound like I'd ruined her party. Out on the back patio, I stood in the cold air and tried to breathe through the tightness in my throat. Ethan followed after a minute, shutting the sliding door behind him like he wanted privacy. "Not for me, for him." "Are you serious?" he hissed. "You couldn't just say no nicely?" I said no. I whispered, shaking. "Nicely would have been if you didn't set me up." He scoffed. "I didn't set you up." "Yes, you did," I said. "You told him my salary. You knew exactly what would happen." Ethan's mouth tightened. "You're acting like my mother is plotting against you." "She is," I said, and I hated how crazy it sounded out loud. But it was true. She counts and measures people. She's doing it to me now because you gave her the numbers. Ethan leaned closer, voice low and furious. "You always do this," he said. "You always make everything some big betrayal. It's a car. It's my sister. She has kids. And I have boundaries," I said. "I have a life. I have bills. I have goals. I'm not a spare wallet for your family." He stared at me like I'd said something disgusting. "So you're going to hoard your money while my niece and nephew—" "Don't," I snapped, louder than I meant to, and my voice echoed in the cold. Don't use kids like a weapon. Ethan went still. His eyes flashed, and then he said quietly, "You think you're better than us because you earn more." That sentence was the beginning of the end, even if I didn't know it yet. Because it wasn't about the car. It wasn't about his mother. It was about his resentment. The next few days were awful in that slow, tense way where everything is technically normal, but you can feel something rotten under the surface. Ethan was polite in the mornings, like he was performing being a good husband. He would make coffee and set it down near me without speaking. He would ask, "How was your day?" in a flat voice, and then look at his phone. At night, he'd lie in bed facing away from me, scrolling, the glow of his screen making his cheekbone look sharp. When I tried to talk about it, he'd sigh and say, "Can we not do this again?" Like I was the one keeping the wound open. Meanwhile, Lorraine started texting me, not directly asking for money. She's too smart for that. It was little things. Just thinking of you. Hope work is going well. Must be busy at your level. Maddie is stressed. Poor thing. Every message was a needle wrapped in cotton. I try to keep my peace by focusing on what I could control. Work, laundry, cooking, normal life. But in the quiet moments, my brain kept circling the same thought. If Ethan can give away something that personal like it's nothing, what else has he given away? What else has he told him about me? My savings? My bonus? The amount in my account? The way I cried last year when I got promoted? My insecurities? My plans? I started feeling exposed in my own marriage, like I didn't have a private corner anymore. And then, because life has a cruel sense of timing, I tripped over another secret. It was stupid at first. One of those small, harmless things that turns into a trapdoor. Ethan left his laptop open on the dining table one evening, and I only noticed because I was looking for a recipe and my phone was dead. I wasn't trying to snoop. I swear that. I typed into the search bar, and his browser auto-filled a tab he'd been looking at, degree verification request, and a university name that didn't match the one he always claimed. My fingers hovered over the trackpad. My stomach tightened. I told myself not to click it, but it was right there, like a thread hanging out of a sweater. I clicked. It was an email draft. To HR, unsaved, half-written, something like, "Hi, just following up regarding the credential verification." I attended, and then he'd stopped, like he couldn't finish the lie. I sat back in my chair slowly, heart thumping. Ethan's degree is his thing. He talks about it all the time. He tells stories about his uni days like they were an epic saga. He has a framed certificate in his office. He uses it in arguments, too. When he wants to shut down a conversation, he'll say, "I didn't get a degree to be treated like I'm stupid." I stood up and walked into his home office, the one room he likes to control. The framed certificate was on the wall above his desk. I stared at it. The font looked slightly off. The seal looked too crisp, like it came from a printer, not an institution. I leaned closer and noticed the school name wasn't exactly right. Like it was close to a real university, but not quite. My mouth went dry. When Ethan came home, I was sitting on the couch with the certificate in my lap. I'd taken it off the wall with trembling hands. It felt insane, like I'd become someone I didn't recognize. But my brain couldn't let it go. He froze in the doorway when he saw it. "What are you doing?" He said, voice sharp. "Is this real?" I asked, and my voice sounded too calm, which scared me. His eyes flicked to the certificate and back to my face. His jaw worked like he was chewing the question. "Why are you going through my stuff?" he snapped. "Answer me," I said. My fingers gripped the frame so hard my knuckles hurt. "Is your degree real?" He took a step forward, then stopped. "You're acting crazy," he said. "I asked you a yes or no question," I said, and my voice shook now, anger and fear tangling. "Is it real?" His face changed. Just a flicker, but enough. A flash of something like cornered. He exhaled, long and bitter. "It's complicated," he said. My stomach dropped. "Ethan." He rubbed his face, then looked at me with this mix of defiance and embarrassment. "I did the coursework," he said quickly. "I went. I studied. I just didn't finish the last part. And it's not like. My job isn't even about the degree. It's about experience." "That's not what I asked," I said, voice small despite myself. "You told me you graduated." He spread his hands like he was offering a reasonable explanation. I basically did, he said. I was 1 unit short. One. And then life happened. And when I applied for the job, they wanted it, and he stopped jaw tight. I couldn't afford to start over. I couldn't afford to be stuck. Everyone lies on their resume. Not about a degree. I whispered. He snapped. You don't get it. You've never had to fight for respect. You walk into rooms, and people listen because you... His eyes darted over me like my body, my presence, my job title were all weapons. I needed something. My throat felt tight. So you faked it. He didn't deny it. He just stared at the carpet, breathing hard. I sat there with the frame in my lap, feeling like the floor under my marriage had shifted. Not just because he lied to his employer, though that was huge, but because he lied to me. For years, with such ease. The frame certificate wasn't a mistake. It was a prop. Does your work know? I asked. His head snapped up. No, he said quickly. And you're not telling them. I laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. That's what you're worried about. I'm worried about you ruining my life, he said. And his voice shook with real fear now. I'm worried about you getting angry and doing something you can't take back. And in that moment, I saw it. The way he measured threats. The way he assumed I'd use his secret like leverage, because that's how his family operates. That's how he operates. Everything is currency. I'm not going to do anything, I said, mostly to convince myself. But you need to understand, this is serious. This isn't just a little lie. Ethan's face hardened again, defensive armor snapping back on. So what? You're going to leave me because I didn't tick one box, he demanded. You're going to be like my mom and judge me? Don't, I said exhausted. Don't drag your mom into this like she's the moral compass. He flinched at that, then turned away, and that night he slept in the spare room like I was the one who'd done something wrong. I tried, for about a week, to handle it like a healthy adult. I suggested therapy. He scoffed. I suggested he come clean to his employer and offer a plan. He shouted that I was trying to destroy him. I suggested we separate finances more clearly because his mother knowing my salary had already caused damage. He accused me of punishing him. Every conversation ended with him storming away or turning it into a fight about my tone and my control issues. And then the car situation came back up. Lorraine called Ethan, and he came into the kitchen with his phone in his hand like a weapon. Mom's upset, he said. I don't care, I said. And I was slicing vegetables so hard the knife thudded on the board. She thinks you're humiliating Maddie, he said. I'm not paying for a car, I said, not looking up. Ethan's voice went cold. You could, he said. You just don't want to. You like watching my family struggle, so you can feel superior. I slammed the knife down. Stop, I said, trembling. You are not doing this. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, and he looked at me with this bitter little smile. Maybe you should, he said softly, since you earned so much. Maybe you should actually contribute to this marriage. I stared at him. What are you talking about? You know what I'm talking about, he said. You keep everything separate. Your money is your money. My money is barely anything compared to yours. You don't even act like we're a team. We are not a team when you give my private information to your mother, I said. My voice was shaking again. We are not a team when you lie to me for years. We are not a team when you let your family treat me like an ATM. Ethan's eyes flashed. You want to talk about lying? He snapped. You act like you're perfect, like you've never cut corners, like you've never done anything wrong. At least my lie got me somewhere. At least it made me someone. The way he said someone made my chest hurt because it sounded like he meant I was making him feel like no one. That night, after he went to bed, I sat on the couch in the dark and stared at the reflection of myself in the turned-off TV. I looked tired. I looked older than I felt. I kept thinking about the way he'd said, "You're not telling them," like he could command it, like my role was to protect him no matter what he did to me. And I kept thinking about Lorraine at that table, saying my salary out loud, using it to decide what I should pay for. That didn't happen by accident. Ethan had handed it to her. He'd chosen his family's approval over my trust. My brain started doing that ugly thing it does when you're hurt. It started building a list. Every time Ethan dismissed my feelings. Every time he minimized something that mattered to me. Every time he told me I was overreacting. Every time he protected his own comfort at my expense. It stacked up until it wasn't just about one dinner or one secret. It was about a pattern. He wanted the benefits of being married to me, my stability, my money, my emotional labor, without respecting me as a person with boundaries. I'm not proud of what I did next. I need to say that clearly because Reddit loves to pick teams, and I know how this sounds. I know, but I did it. The next morning, I called his boss. Not HR, his actual boss. A woman named Priya, who had been nothing but professional to me at company events, who had once complimented my shoes and asked how I liked my job. I stared at Priya's name in my contacts because Ethan had saved it in my phone after a Christmas party. In case of emergency, he'd said, laughing. My hand was shaking as I dialed. When Priya answered, her voice was brisk. Hi, this is Priya. I swallowed hard. Hi, I said. This is Ethan's wife. I'm sorry to call you directly. I need to tell you something, and I don't know the right channel. There was a pause. Is Ethan okay? She asked, immediately concerned. He's fine, I said quickly. It's not that kind of emergency. It's about his credentials. Silence again, longer this time. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I could have hung up. I could have stopped. But once the words were in the air, I felt this grim momentum. I found out Ethan doesn't have the degree he claimed he had, I said, and my voice sounded far away to me. He told me he completed it, but he admitted to me he didn't, and the certificate in our house isn't legitimate. Priya didn't say anything for a second. Then her voice went very careful. How are you aware of what he claimed to us? She asked. I'm not, I said, and that was true. I didn't have his resume. I didn't have proof of what he told them, except his own fear. But Ethan has always said the degree was required for the role, and he admitted to me he falsified it. Priya exhaled slowly. Thank you for telling me, she said, and the professionalism in her voice almost made me cry, because she sounded like an adult in a world where I'd been living in manipulation. This is serious. I can't discuss internal processes with you, but we will handle it. I swallowed. I'm sorry, I whispered because suddenly I felt nauseous. Are you safe? Priya asked softly, and that question hit me harder than anything, because it implied she heard the tremor in my voice. It implied she understood that people don't make calls like this when things are calm. Yes, I said, and I meant physically. Emotionally, I wasn't sure. Okay, Priya said. Thank you. When I hung up, my hands were cold and sweaty at the same time. I sat there staring at my phone like it had turned into something radioactive. Ethan didn't know right away. Of course he didn't. Companies don't move like lightning. They move like a heavy door. But he knew something was coming. The next few weeks, he became hyper-vigilant. He jumped at notifications. He came home tense, eyes darting. He asked me, more than once, you didn't tell anyone, right? Like he was checking a lock. I lied to his face. I hate that. I hate that I became someone who could do that. But I also hated that he'd forced me into a corner where honesty felt like handing him a weapon. Then, yesterday happened. He came home earlier than usual, face pale, lips pressed tight. He didn't say hello. He didn't kiss me. He walked straight past me and into the bedroom, and I heard drawers opening, closing like he was tearing through the room. When he came back out, he was holding a folder. His hands were shaking. They call me in, he said, voice thick. Priya, HR, my manager. They said there was a concern raised about my degree, and they asked me to provide verification. I kept my face still. My heart was hammering. They already knew, he said, voice rising. They already had information. They asked me to confirm, and he swallowed hard and looked at me with something close to terror. I tried to explain. I told them I did the work. I told them I was 1 unit short. I told them I could finish it. And his voice broke. They said it didn't matter, that I falsified a credential, that I violated policy. I could barely breathe. They didn't fire me, he said, almost like he couldn't believe it. They demoted me. They pulled me out of the lead role. They cut my pay. They moved me under someone he used to manage. He laughed once, sharp and awful. Do you know what that feels like? To walk back to your desk while everyone watches. I watched him collapse onto the edge of the couch, elbows on knees, head in his hands. For a second, just a second, I felt this stab of pity, because humiliation is a real thing. Because I know what it's like to feel watched and judged. Then he lifted his head and looked at me, and his eyes narrowed. "Only a few people knew," he said slowly. "Only a few. And my mom said you were furious about the salary thing, and you being cold, and you found the certificate." His voice turned into something sharp. "Did you do this?" The kitchen felt too bright. The fridge hummed. My laptop fan whirred softly. Normal sounds again in the middle of destruction. I didn't answer fast enough. Ethan stood up, face twisting. "You did," he said, and his voice shook like it was fighting tears. "You actually did it. You called my boss." I swallowed. My mouth tasted like metal. "You told your mom my salary," I said, and my voice came out low, almost flat. "That's your defense?" he snapped. "That I told my mom a number? Are you kidding me?" "It wasn't a number," I said, and my hand was shaking now. "It was my privacy. It was my safety. And you gave it to someone who used it to pressure me. You let your family treat me like a bank." Ethan's face went red. "So you ruined my career?" "You ruined your career when you faked a degree." I shot back, and the words came out sharper than I intended. "You built it on a lie." He flinched like I hit him. Then his face hardened into something ugly. "You wanted to punish me," he said. "You want to take me down because you can't stand not being in control." I laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. "You think I'm in control?" I asked. "Ethan, I've been living your family's orbit for years, being measured and compared in guilt. I asked you for one thing, privacy, and you couldn't even give me that." He stepped closer. "You could have left," he said. "You could have divorced me. But instead you chose to destroy me." That sentence landed hard, because it was true in the way that makes you feel sick. I could have left. I had options. I chose this route because I wanted him to feel consequences, and part of me wanted him to understand betrayal by tasting it. That's not noble. That's not clean. That's messy and human and vindictive. "I didn't do it lightly," I said, voice shaking. "I didn't do it because it was fun. I did it because you kept crossing lines and then telling me I was dramatic for caring." Ethan's eyes filled with tears finally, but he blinked them back hard. "I loved you," he said, like it was an accusation. "I loved you too," I said, my throat burned. "I still do in some stupid way. But you don't get to love me and also hand me over to your mother to manage." He laughed bitter. "So now what?" he said. "Now you're going to sit there in your nice job with your nice salary and watch me crawl?" Something snapped in me at that. Not anger, clarity. "I'm not watching you crawl," I said quietly. "I'm watching you finally face something you've avoided for years. And I'm not going to be the person who lies for you anymore." Ethan stared at me like he didn't recognize me. Maybe he didn't. Maybe I didn't recognize me either. He turned away and grabbed his bag off the floor. His hands were still shaking. He paused at the door and said, without looking back, "My mom was right about you." That one hurt, because it meant he'd still rather align with her than with me, even now, even after everything. "Your mom didn't build your fake degree," I said, voice low. "You did." He froze for a second like he might turn around and scream. Then he just left, slamming the door again. I sat down on the kitchen floor after he left, which is something I didn't even realize I was doing until my knees hit tile. My whole body felt like it was vibrating. I pressed my palm to my forehead and tried to breathe, and all I could think was, I crossed a line. And also, he crossed 100 lines, and I kept pretending they were paper cuts. Lorraine called me 20 minutes later. I didn't answer. Maddie texted, "You're evil." I didn't answer. My phone kept buzzing until I turned it off and put it in a drawer like it was a grenade. Last night, Ethan didn't come home. I don't know where he went. Probably his mom's. Probably that couch where Lorraine will stroke his hair and tell him he's a good boy and I'm a monster, and he'll soak it up because it's easier than looking at the truth. This morning, I looked at our joint accounts and I felt this cold fear because I don't trust what he'll do when he feels cornered. I transferred my portion into my personal account. I changed passwords. I hated myself for how clinical I became, but I also heard his voice in my head from the patio. "You think you're better than us because you earn more. Like my money is the real enemy, not his choices." I know Reddit will ask why I didn't just divorce him. I know. The answer is messy. Because I loved him. Because we had a life. Because I thought if I explained things enough, he'd understand. Because I didn't want to blow up my marriage over his mother being intrusive. Because I didn't want to admit that the person who promised to protect me was also the one handing out knives. And yes, I did something vindictive. I did something that could permanently alter his career. I'm not pretending that's morally pure. I'm not pretending I'm the hero. I'm a person who got humiliated in a family dining room and then discovered her husband's entire professional identity was built on a lie, and something in me broke in a direction I didn't expect. The part one can't stop replaying, though, isn't even the demotion. It's the moment at that dinner when Lorraine said my salary like it belonged to the table. Ethan was sitting right there. He heard it. He watched me freeze. And he didn't correct her. He didn't protect me. He just waited for me to swallow it so the lunch could stay pleasant. That's what made me feel alone in my own marriage. I don't know what happens next. I don't know if Ethan will come back ready to apologize or come back ready to punish me. I don't know if I'll feel guilty forever or if one day I'll just feel free. Right now, I feel like I'm standing in the wreckage of choices we both made, and the air still tastes like yesterday. But I do know this. If someone can give away your privacy to buy approval from their family and then demand your loyalty to cover their lies, they're not a partner. They're a risk. And I'm tired of being the safest thing in a room full of people who keep lighting matches.